Good morning to you. It's Daybreak at iFiber One News Radio. I'm Jeff Slakey. Hope you're having a good start to your day. We have got wonderful guests continuing in on here, the morning show, and I am happy to welcome in, and thanks for spending some time before a big meeting here upcoming, Commissioner Terri Drexler from Mason County. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Been a long year for the county commissioners.
It has.
Been a lot of ups and downs, and not many meetings left before the 2018 budget is adopted. It could be today, the last one, before you hammer out some things and a vote maybe next week.
Next week.
And talk to me a little bit about how things have been going. I know we had some struggles during the summer, and what's the mood around the county and the commission and the chambers there, and how we're kind of coming to the end of the year on all this stuff?
So it's been pretty tense. We knew and had met with all the elected officials mid-spring and let them know that we were seeing some cash flow problems, and that we were anticipating some cuts and potentially some mid-year cuts. We tried to give folks as much heads up as we could. As you know, we did have to make $1.8 million worth of cuts in July, and that was very, very tense. And it's been tense ever since. We did ask each year at the end of June, each of the elected officials and department heads send us their budget requests. We send out a instructions, so to speak, or what we'd like to see in that budget request. And we did ask for 17.5% cuts. Didn't see them. So the mid-year cuts were necessary for cash flow issues, and then also for us to hopefully continue good conversations around, okay, what are non-essential services? And there's an assumption that there are non-essentials. When I first took office, we did a review of everybody's budgets with them to look at what were non-mandatory and non-essential services, and we didn't find.
Yeah, you guys were getting pretty low, pretty bottom of the barrel. I mean, right when you first came on, I do remember that.
Well, truly, when I came on, we were seeing quite a few years of low forecasted revenues, and so they were pretty conservative in those. And then those revenues came in a lot higher than what had been forecasted, and so we did build up a healthy fund balance. Then we tried to build back some of the areas where we had been lagging behind in the other counties in wages, and because it was the end of the recession, there was now a lot of movement, and we were losing some of the best and the brightest to our neighboring counties who could pay far more than we could. So we tried to stave that loss by doing incremental increases. And then there was a lot of desire to build up our law enforcement. And between all these issues and then issues way out of our control, we did end up building an unsustainable budget last year.
Yeah,
I admit that. We didn't see some of the revenues that we normally get back of unexpended budget authority. We had some unexpected costs that went out the door. The mood's been pretty tense, but I have to tell you that all three of us commissioners had different ways of approaching these needed cuts, which amounted to $5 million from what folks from the 2016 budget or 2017 budget, excuse me, and then far more from what they had requested, because they had requested what by law they say this law says that each department head and elected official shall submit a budget necessary to do their operations.
Right.
And so of course that means we'd like another staff member here. We'd like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have had three different approaches, the three commissioners, and yesterday we had a really, really good session of coming as close as we could to agreement. We have maybe about $250,000 still to hammer out.
Okay.
I took the approaches that I could of talking to a lot of citizens, and of course based on our Proposition 1 vote that was soundly defeated. The citizens said, despite me going through what the impacts would be on county services, make the cuts, Commissioner, make the cuts. So it does hurt. There will be reduced services, and there will be an impact to citizens. The one that I worry the most about is the courts.
Right.
We don't have control over how many folks come through our courts, and we have a lot of legislative mandates that are very, very expensive to keep up with a reduced workforce. So that's one of the issues, or one of the areas we'll see an impact. We'll see an impact in our assessor, treasurer, and auditor's office. So far, the assessor will close one day, and there'll be some reduced hours. And then we haven't gotten definite information about what the impacts will be specifically on the treasurer's office. I expect there'll be another one-day closure. And then our auditor, she said that she was seriously thinking about removing or no longer doing licensing. It is a service that is contracted from the state. We do it on behalf of the state. And that was one of the services she thought that might be hard to sustain with the cuts that she's being asked to make. As well as another option was we do hire part-time help, and they're experienced help for our elections. Yeah. And there's a lot of personnel needed, because to go to a ballot box you need 2 people. And just there's a lot of extra work there. And so maybe pulling staff from other areas to do the election work that those temporary workers had done. Our sheriff's office, I'm not quite sure. I've heard multiple numbers about reductions in force there. So there will be impacts to the community. But that's what the citizens have said.
One of the things that you kind of, it seems to me, over the years following this and watching and participating along, that we could be at the point where, folks they use the term rock bottom. And now there may be just one way for all of us in the county to come out of this together. Are there, with everything laid out on the table and as uncomfortable as these cuts are going to be, do you get a sense that this is a point in time that we are then able to come together as a community and work through some of these differences that we have, and start to rebuild the coffers that we need, and put the faith and trust back into the county government, and that the services will be there and stuff like that into the next year and moving forward?
Well, Commissioner Schutte has proposed, and I very much support, right after the first of the year, establishing a citizens fiscal sustainable commission, in which they can do that budget line item scrubbing that we've been doing. Yeah. And they, as an independent group, can review where they think there might be some cost savings, okay, or whether we have hit rock bottom and we do need to go to the voters. I think another piece that's tandem with that is the Association of Counties have, for probably 4 or 5 years, asked the legislature to reconsider the 1% property tax increase allowed to us. For Mason County, that equals about $90,000. The costs go way up more than $90,000. And they have proposed that it be tied to the price index, okay, or population growth, both of which are drivers of our costs. We'll keep going back to them, but we're trying very hard to have a very serious, hard conversation with them. And there are issues in areas that they're not understanding the impacts. One of the things I think people don't really quite are familiar with is that county governments are agents of the state. We do services on behalf of the state. Right. And so many times those services are not really supported by the state. They're supported by the local property tax. And we have issues that come, the old unfunded mandates. Yeah. But probably the most glaring one is about 3 years ago, the Supreme Court had determined that each public defender has a caseload to ensure that people who couldn't afford their defense or couldn't afford an attorney would have good legal representation. And with these very large caseloads, they felt that people were not. And there was a lawsuit that drove this. And so with those caseloads, that budget alone tripled within a year, and we're still having a hard time keeping up with it. That was a situation where we're doing that because the Constitution said these people are allowed this defense. if they can't afford it. And we'd like some help from the state. Out of almost $1 million budget, we get $30,000 from the state.
I was just going to ask you that. You brought up the unfunded mandates even earlier here, and we have good working relationships with Representative McEwen and Griffey and State Senator Sheldon, and I know the state coffers are not flush with cash. They're not just giving out money to everybody, but there has got to be a point in time where the counties put their feet down. They say, listen, we appreciate you wanting us to do these things. What we don't appreciate is you making us do them and then not giving us any sort of support. Is there a conversation that you are having with fellow commissioners across the state about, I guess the term is drawing a line in the sand or something, and saying, listen, legislatures, we understand that these are important things, and we know that you're not got a gazillion dollars to hand out, but we don't have it either.
And yes, we have. The Washington State Association of Counties, I sit on the board of directors, did make a very bold move this year of asking our members to help pay for what we're calling a communication and litigation strategy. Conversations with legislators and even the governor have resulted in, what does the legislature pay attention to? Lawsuits. Mm-hmm. McCleary is an example. We don't want to do it, but that's what it takes to get their attention, because year after year after year we've asked for at least flexibility on the property tax. And I think that they understand that constraint, because when they established the new property tax to meet the McCleary decision, they didn't put that lid on it. Right. They knew that lid makes it difficult to sustain the rising costs of government. So we are having that conversation. I don't know what exactly that'll look like as far as a litigation. I think our public defense issue is one that would stand out. Yeah. There are smaller ones here and there. We had a bill passed that said that there shall be a ballot box at every post office, regardless of the cost. I sat and listened to each of the floor speeches during that debate. Almost every one of the legislators stood up and said, we know there's no money for this, but it's a good idea. Right. Well, thank you. Yeah. And it's not a lot of money, but it's another example, and they were very cognizant that they were pushing down to us. Right now, there's an initiative, a really good initiative, to require a certain amount of training for our law enforcement. If that goes on, and it's a good idea, and if that goes on the ballot, I have this awful fear that we'll be the ones having to pay for it. Yeah. And so, we need to get their attention. If it's a lawsuit or just continued discussions, our three legislators are very aware, but the competing priorities is always going to be the issue.
We are running just about out of time here, but continuing on, you do have your county meeting here today as you continue to hammer through this budget. Sounds like you're closer and closer every day to coming up with a suitable number to all three of you commissioners. I've extended the invitations to both other Commissioner Netherland and Schutte. Commissioner Schutte will be in on Thursday. Good. So we'll talk with him about some of the other things. I do appreciate you coming on and talking. These are some tough times, but you guys are up there making the decisions that you think are best from the county, and you can only do so much with what we got, and sometimes it's quite limited.
Can't squeeze blood out of a turnip.
No,
is that
you
the term?
Can't. Commissioner Drexler, good to see you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.